55 years after our independence from Britain, many Jamaicans are concerned that we are once again undergoing a new form of colonialism, a form of economic colonialism by Chinese businesses operating in Jamaica. Nowhere is this more evident than in the construction sector, where Czech and the 14 or so other companies, Chinese companies that now operate in that sector, have controlled at least 50% of the sector. And this is by the estimates of industry professionals.
Well, unfortunately, almost up to half of the labor now employed on construction is Chinese, which is the same reason why the small entrepreneurial Jamaican, who invariably is an engineer or similarly qualified to work in the industry, are mostly unemployed.
They do this through unfair competition. And why do they say unfair competition? Basically, for 4 reasons. First, most of these companies are either 100% or majority controlled by the Chinese government, giving them virtually unlimited resources.
Yes, we were invited by the UDC to be informed about the MOU that the Prime Minister had announced, the MOU that would have enabled a Chinese entity to design all of downtown, including the government buildings, at no cost to Jamaica. We asked for the MOU, were advised that it would take us 30 days. After about maybe 45 or 60 days, we still hadn't gotten it. However, the architects eventually got a meeting with the Prime Minister himself, and within 2 days of that meeting, we got the MOU. And of course, the MOU says that the Chinese will be paid $1 million US. So we have moved from free to $1 million.
Secondly, they come into Jamaica typically on the basis of concessionary financing for a government project. And they get all sorts of duty concessions on imported machinery and equipment, and they get to buy local building inputs free of GCT. They then use these concessions and this machinery and equipment to compete for private sector projects. So they have an advantage over local contractors.
Our country is poor and broke. So we went to the Chinese to assist us at the national macro level for development. They, of course, have their own agenda. They have articulated a policy which will give them major geopolitical influence throughout the world, and particularly the developing world. And so we went to them to get that sort of assistance, and they gladly have given funding which had enabled us initially to go on to some infrastructure development projects. And in so doing, we made concessions of our own. So they loaned us money, which they say is very cheap money. In turn, we gave concessions to them, which included duty, GCT-free importation of goods and materials, and also goods, materials, and equipment, and also a concession that they could employ 50% of the labor required on any project on which they're involved. I have said to the authorities, whereas I've seen 50 Chinese, I have not seen 50 Jamaican, and this is in every case that I've looked at. And so this is clearly is going to result in underdevelopment.
The third allegation, which is not limited to Jamaica but quite widespread in Africa and in Southeast Asia, is that these Chinese companies use convict labor. And there are many anecdotal stories that suggest that that is the case on many of the projects.
It has been alleged, not here alone, but in Africa and Southeast Asia, that they are prisoners A number of them are. I wouldn't believe that everybody is, but they think a large amount of them are prisoners who come and work off some of their sentence in the various countries and here in Jamaica also. So that has made it particularly attractive, I understand, to the private sector. As you can observe now, almost all the private sector projects being undertaken in City Kingston, and some of them outside, are being undertaken by Chinese companies.
Finally, there's no effective regulation of these Chinese companies. Their records are kept in Mandarin. The tax administration and audit department has no effective way of telling what is used on one project versus another, where workers are moving between companies, etc. The Chinese government as a policy is not very transparent about all these operations. Many international media have attempted to penetrate what is taking place, penetrate the veil of what takes place in many of these companies with absolutely no cooperation from the Chinese government. We have written to the Chinese embassy in Jamaica asking them to respond to these allegations of unfair competition and to shed some light on Chinese business practices, specifically as they're operating in Jamaica. If we get that response, we will definitely do a follow-up probe. But in any event, we want to look beyond just the construction sector. We want to see what is behind Chinese retail establishments taking over most of the towns and villages in rural Jamaica. And again, is it fair competition?